The Georgia real estate market, is it crashing or is it shifting? What in the world is going on? Hi, I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, and I'm here with my business partner, Ashley Lazarian, and we are here to talk to you all about the Georgia real estate market and answer your questions about what in the world is going on. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we are going to jump right into it. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey Sarah, how are you?
I am awesome. And so obviously we have all seen the headlines and it seems as if the market is crashing. What do you say to that? Is that what we're experiencing out there in the field?
That's definitely not what I'm seeing. So I don't know if you guys are followers of Tom Ferry, but he's a very well-known coach, and he always says that headlines are there to terrify and not clarify, and that couldn't be further than the truth. Or actually, that's exactly what is happening right now. Is I feel like we're just seeing a lot of headlines to scare us to death, when in reality, if you really look at things and break them down, it's not so scary.
Yeah, it is not so scary. And I think what we're really seeing is the market is starting to shift rather than crash. And for us in our business, who we primarily serve people that are relocating and moving to the Georgia area, we are celebrating this. It is a great thing for buyers that we are serving, and it makes it a lot easier to get them under contract on a home, depending upon the area that they are looking in. And it gives us a lot more options and strategies that we can employ whenever we are helping them come up with a game plan of making their move. So I found an interesting article that I want to share with everyone. And so I am going to pull that up. And basically, it's talking about the real estate market and what is going on in the Atlanta real estate market. So let's take a look at this article. And basically, it's asking if a summer vacation tsunami washed out the Atlanta housing market in July. And in this article, it states that home sales in the metro Atlanta area fell 31% year over year in July and dropped 22% from the previous month. And so one of the things that, we have to talk about in that is that, Ashley, do you remember what the real estate market was like last July?
I do. It was painful.
Yeah, super painful. And it was painful because there is such limited inventory. There is so much buyer demand, and people were just doing anything and everything to get a house under contract because of that limited inventory. And so, because of that, we had a lot of home sales last July. So, it's not completely surprising and shocking to me that we have had a dip this year whenever we're comparing month over month to last year.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of people have kind of been forced into this rat race that was the last 2 years. Since COVID, we paused and then we just came out of it like a slingshot. And so now that we're starting to slow down, people are panicked. But if we just go back 2 years, even 2019, we were a very stable, normal market, and it was typical 34 days on the market before a home sold. You didn't have lines of people. We had never seen lines of people. I know you and I have been this, over 20 years together, and I've never stood outside of a home in a line to get in before, which is what we were seeing the last 2 years. People waiving contingencies of all kinds. And so if we just look back just 2 years to 2019, we're just going back to that.
Yeah, we are. So we're returning back to that normal market. And speaking of a normal market, this article states that another reason for this dip in home sales is that we're starting to see kind of that return to normalcy in our market. And here in the Atlanta area, we have always had a dip in home sales in the summer months because people are going on vacation. And so this article kind of states that everyone has been on vacation, or they're finally taking those vacations that they wanted to since 2020, and that they're finally able to go on those vacations, and that we are now starting to see kind of like that more seasonality in our market.
Right.
And, you and I remember back in 2019, this is exactly what we would experience, is that there would be a little bit of a dip in the market, especially in July, as people were preparing to go back to school. And I think this is something interesting that we get a lot of times whenever we're talking to people in these buyer consultations, is that they are shocked at how early we start school back here.
Yes. And it's funny because, I have two kids myself. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. So we're in elementary school and in middle school. And it's funny because as I, talk to people that are all over the country, California, New York, Chicago, um, everybody starts later than we do. We start about a month earlier than everybody else. So it's a big transition for people. And I don't know about everybody else, but for me personally, as the parent side of things, I'm stressed getting those kids back to school. Shopping, haircuts, shoes, backpacks, open houses, all of the things. So, those couple of weeks leading up to the kids going back to school, I'm not focused on the everything else. So that's where we hear so many people say, I either want to get here before the school year starts so that we can be there, get ready, and get the kids off, or I want to probably pause and come in maybe December timeframe when we have another pause kind of between, in that Christmas break, holiday break.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, for those of you that are watching, school actually started back for most kids at the end of last week, and this week has been their first full week of school. Another thing, I don't know if other people experience this where they live, but you can definitely tell when school is back in session because the amount of traffic just increases tenfold. It took me forever to get home from work today, back to the house, and definitely could tell that school was back in session.
Yes, those
Yeah.
buses, I'm telling you.
So, another thing that we often evaluate whenever we are looking at, is the market crashing or is it shifting? And Ashley and I will both agree, and experts agree, that this is more of a market shift. And sometimes, though, we'll talk to clients or people that we know, friends, family, that believe it's a crash. And there's a couple of reasons why this time is not like last time. And I am going to share this slide here, or this, it came out of a really, really great article talking about the month's inventory of homes for sale. So, one of the great things that we are starting to see is that there's more inventory on the market for buyers. And this is a great thing for the buyers that we service because they're coming into town, and obviously we have a lot more homes to show them. But this graphic is perfect of why this time is not like last time. So we have a buyer's market is when we have more than 6 months supply of inventory on the market. A seller's market is anything less than 6 months supply of inventory. And if you look at this graph, we have not had a seller's market, or I'm sorry, a buyer's market since around 2011 or 12 here in Georgia. And then you can tell that was back in during the peak of the recession. And if you look at where inventory is today, we are well below that neutral market of 6 to 7 months supply of inventory. And so, Ashley, how are you starting to see it play out whenever we have buyers that are wanting to see homes, when it comes to the amount of homes that they're able to see?
It's actually such a welcomed moment right now because the last 2 years literally feel like I threw out my high heels and I put on my running shoes because you got to keep on running every day. And it was literally like, okay, do you love this home? You've got 5 minutes to make a decision. You can't have any contingencies and people are panicked. And that is not a fun way to buy a house. So now we're actually getting to go show people multiple homes. They can sleep on it again. It really is a welcomed breath of fresh air because you're able to talk to people about it. They're able to talk to their spouse about it. See, do we think this is a good purchase? Does it make sense to us financially? We're actually, getting to add in those contingencies again of a due diligence period so that you can have an inspection and make sure that this is a wise home purchase. The appraisal contingencies are actually back in play. So the market shifted, I think, faster than any of us anticipated. But in 2020, it also shifted faster than any of us anticipated. So as quick as it came is as quick as it's over. And I think it's just going to take some time for people to really grasp, like, okay, like we're moving forward with this.
Yeah, completely. And I would have to say that you're spot on with that. And we're also still seeing though that in some areas, in some price points, in some neighborhoods, it still kind of is very, very competitive, and we still are seeing the same market that we saw a couple of months ago, where it's still multiple offers, over asking, having to put your best foot forward and beat out that competition in order to get a home under contract.
You definitely still have to come with your best foot forward. And we definitely, especially in some of the more populated areas, we're definitely still seeing multiple offers. But you and I both talked about that. We're not seeing 20 offers and people lined out the door. It's 3 or 4 offers, and definitely still coming in with your best foot forward. Not trying to think that it's a buyer's market yet and really come in with a low ball offer. You still have to definitely come in with a strong but fair offer.
Yeah. And so another reason why this time is not like last time, going back to that supply of inventory, this is just another way of looking at it, is that today, on average, we have about a 3-month supply nationwide. And so remember that this is a nationwide stat. Obviously, the Atlanta market, the North Metro Atlanta area that we serve, is um, a lot less than 3 months. We're more looking at just over a 1-month supply of inventory in most areas. But you can see at the height of the recession, that was just over a 10-month supply of inventory that we saw. And another thing that is drastically different is the availability of credit that is available to potential home buyers at this time. So, Ashley, you were an agent back during the recession, and you know how easy it was for just about anyone could get a mortgage back then, right?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So you see there, so that the higher that number on that graph represents how easy it was to get a loan, and things drastically changed after the recession in 2006, 7, and 8, and the lending standards has drastically changed. Federal regulations. Really, you have to be a very, very, very well qualified buyer in order to get a loan or qualify for a loan. And so that has drastically limited the risk that banks have for foreclosures and things like that. And so we're just not seeing what we used to see in the market that we did back then.
Yeah. Some of the things that I found really interesting were looking at the statistics, and kind of going back to that point. We actually just recently had a client who they were going down the route of getting a loan, obtaining a loan, and then they decided halfway through, you know what, I just don't want to deal with this process. I'm just going to do cash. And they really thought that they could just pull out a briefcase of cash and throw it on the table and we would close. That's not that easy. Unfortunately, prior to 2008 and leading up to that, it kind of was that easy. But because of everything that we experienced at that time, like you said, lending is so much more strict now, and they are going to trace every dollar. So you're not able to do those types of things. And back, leading up to 2008, so many people had home equity lines of credit to where they barely had any equity in their home. They had maxed it out. Any equity that they had pulled out in those home equity lines. And a lot of people had not put a lot of money down on properties, so they didn't have a ton of equity to start with. And that led to a lot, I feel like, of what we saw in the 2008 crash. And if you look at some of the graphs and statistics, I know you and I were talking about, over 50% of people have at least 60% equity in their home, or 30% of people own it outright this day and age. So are we going to see foreclosures? Are we going to see short sales? I'm sure we'll see a few, but are we going to see the mass amounts that we did back then? Absolutely not. People are in a completely different financial standpoint.
Yeah, so that is so great. So this graph shows the foreclosure activity, and this is one of the favorite questions that I personally get from clients, and that is like, well, I want to go find a foreclosure, and I want to capitalize on that. And this graph shows you, y'all, there are not any foreclosures out there. And one of the things that have drastically changed from how it was back then is that we now have these huge corporate entities, these hedge funds that are now buying homes, and those hedge funds and those entities were not in the marketplace back in 2007, 2008 when things were going downhill. So a lot of times these foreclosure homes from banks, they never even make it to the market. They are being bought up at hundreds at a time directly from these hedge funds, from these lenders. And so that is why this return of foreclosures is likely not to happen because of these home buyers that we have in the marketplace.
I agree 100%. And keeping in mind that like you said before, the inventory is still so incredibly low that if by some miraculous way that any of these foreclosures came onto the market, they would be immediately, sucked up by any of the buyers that are still actively looking.
Yeah. So as we're talking through what is going on in the market, make sure go ahead and ask your questions, leave us a comment, and we'll make sure that we get to those questions that you have for us. One of the questions that we had is from Ryan, who said that his newly retired parents are going to be buying in the Gainesville area. That's definitely an area that we serve.
Yes.
Any advice on properties where we could just build two small homes in that area, even Brazelton?
Wow, that's a great question. There are plenty of land opportunities. Obviously, you would want to kind of talk through it a little bit more to see what kind of property are you going for. Are you looking for in a neighborhood, not in a neighborhood, agricultural? There's a lot to that, but there are definitely a lot of land opportunities.
Yeah, and I would think that the biggest thing to factor into that is the time that it's going to take to build those properties on the homes. So, one of the things that we have seen over the past 2 years is this huge demand for new construction. And so that has pulled a lot of tradesmen away from kind of single family builds to building homes in a neighborhood. It's much more efficient and productive and economical for a builder to build 10 houses at once than going to build two houses for an individual on a piece of property. So it's not uncommon for us to hear and work with people that are looking to build a home. And whenever we connect them with a local builder, that their build times are a year out from getting that completed. So that's
Yes,
something to keep in mind.
definitely.
Yeah, so we have Juan who is going to be traveling next week to meet with an agent on our team. So we're super excited to work with you and meet you and your family and help you find a house here. So thank you for that opportunity. So we do serve the North Metro Atlanta area, and we help people relocate all the time. And so, Ashley, one of our clients or potential clients, I should say, emailed this question in, and he said let's see here. It is John from Idaho, and he said that he is thinking about moving, but wondering if this is the right time to buy or if they should hold off until next year. And like, what advice are we giving clients right now?
That is a great question. And honestly, it's one that we probably have conversations with every day, all day. I personally still think that it is a great time to buy. I am not naive to the fact that there's a lot of fear going on right now, and you're hearing headlines all over the place, hence why we're talking about this, right? But for me personally, we're not seeing any signs that the market is going to have a recession. Do I think that home prices are going to continue to rise at the rates that we've seen them? No, I don't. And I'm so thankful for that. We're going to go back to the typical 4 to 6% that we usually are seeing, rise. And so you're still going to be gaining equity. Are you going to be gaining equity at the amount that you were the last 2 years? No, but this is more sustainable long term. And I know a lot of people have been talking about, well, interest rates are so high. I have two things to that. So the first one is, again, 5.8, we're at 5.5 to 5.9, any given day. It literally changes day by day. Realistically, if you look at the statistics, that is not a high rate at all. I remember when I started in real estate 17 years ago, we were at double digits. So that's a high interest rate. Now, that's not to say that if a couple of months ago you were looking and it was at 3 and now you're looking at 5, that is a big jump. However, let's say that you go ahead and purchase now and you're able to refinance next year if rates come down. wouldn't you have rather gotten in now and continue to get equity in the home and then refinance when you have the opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I found this graph about the predictions of experts at various different large organizations of what they think that the real estate market is going to do through the end of 2022. And so they are stating that nationally, home prices are projected to rise more moderately than last year, but they aren't expected to fall. And so
Right.
this is something, if you go back into the videos that we made at the beginning of the year, talking about what we were expecting in the real estate market for 2022, it was that it was going to continue to be a gangbusters year. And what we have found year over year, home prices have been appreciating in these double digits. That is not normal. And yet, if you look at this graph, you still see that they're still expecting home prices to appreciate on an average of 10% for the remainder of the year. So, what that means for you is that if you're looking at a home right now and you were to go look at that same home in November or December, you are going to pay more for that house, and then it's still anticipated to appreciate 10%. And so, a normal appreciation, like Ashley said, is between 3 to 5%. That is what a normal appreciation looks like. Uh, what we have been seeing is home appreciation in the 19% on average here in the Atlanta area. That is crazy talk.
It is. Yes.
So, one of the questions um, that BC asked was, how much do y'all think the median home price will drop in the coming months? So I think we just answered that in saying that the median home price, it may adjust down in the sense that what we're seeing right now in the market, whenever you see a home price that has dropped, I'm sure you've seen these alerts that you get on Zillow showing a recent home price that has dropped. That is a seller that based their house on comps and comparables that sold earlier in the year for aspirational prices. We were still dealing with buyers that were willing to pay over asking, over what the market value was in order to secure that home. And so that wasn't really the true market value. And so you have some agents that are saying, oh, okay, the neighbor's house down the street sold for 550 back in March. So we're going to price the house at 575 because that's what it should be worth today. When really that house back in March, it was listed for 525 and it sold for 550. So this new house should be listed around 535, just throwing out numbers there. But that is what you're seeing are these price drops. They're just coming back down to where the market value is of where that agent should have priced that home to begin with. Is that what you're seeing?
Definitely. And that's, that is the absolute best point to drive home, because people keep saying, well, but the market's crashing. I see the numbers coming down. No, it's sellers having to have realistic expectations that we don't have those same lines of people. Because a lot of times you and I saw where we had homes that we offered $100,000 over list price and we lost. And so that seller originally came in with a number that they thought was fair, and then a buyer decided to take that up and over what the fair market value was. So if we're looking at fair market value compared to what the buyer felt it was worth and what they wanted to pay, that doesn't change the fair market value. And so I think right now we're going through this transitional time where sellers are having to kind of realize I've got to stick at fair market value. And so if they kind of overshot to start with, they've got to kind of bring that back down to where it should have been to begin with.
Yeah. So we have another great question. It says, Warren, thank you for this question. It says, I drive to Lawrenceville from Florida on Friday to start his new job on Monday. Congrats on that new job. It says, my wife likes Grayson as an area. Is that a good area for large home lots at a good price?
That's a great question. There is definitely a lot of building going on in Grayson in the surrounding areas there. Auburn also. So those areas have a little bit more land opportunities than some of the more built out areas such as Duluth or Swanee, Lawrenceville. So there's definitely some great opportunities to check out there. Again, you have to kind of think about where do you want to be as far as build time, because a lot of the builders are, a year out. Some of them, now that we're getting, what am I trying to say? building materials. Now that we're getting those back in, builders are catching up, but you do have to just kind of think about what timeline are you looking for?
Yeah, and that's great. And yes, and typically you are going to find larger lots out there. It's a little bit more of a rural area. And like Ashley said, it is starting to grow. That is known for an area with really great schools. So it's highly sought after as well. And so it is definitely a great place that you should definitely consider. And especially if you have a job in Lawrenceville, it'll make for a really, really easy commute to be on that side. All right. We have another comment. It says, coming there next week to just look around the area to see. Only issue is they don't pay so good for nurses. Looking into Marietta and Alpharetta, where my friends are living, need a new construction. So I don't know anything about the pay rate for nursing, especially compared to where you're coming from. However, you may want to consider factor into the cost of living may be lower here. Depending upon from where you're coming. And so even though the pay might be different for nurses, the cost of housing, utilities, gas, all of those things are more than going to probably make up for that. Another thing that we hear frequently is that our property taxes are a lot lower from where people are coming as well. And so that's something that they factor into making that decision.
Definitely. It's funny that you bring that up. We just had a client that came to visit this week. They were just kind of touring around, right now, they watching the videos, they had come and strategically we're going to look at specific areas just based on the videos. And they were so excited about their McDonald's order because they said, usually we drive through McDonald's and we spend $35 to $40 and we
What?
just through McDonald's and we spent $15. And I was like, who spends $40 at McDonald's? But where they live, that's your typical order. So it's definitely, like you said, check the cost of living.
Yeah. Miss Bless also stated, she said, so basically there's no correction in the market, trying to save as much as I can coming from New York. Okay. Yeah. So we know you're coming from New York. Cost of living is definitely going to be cheaper here. Those new construction that you're looking for, way cheaper, depending upon where you're coming from in New York. So I would say that we are starting to see a correction in the market and that buyers have more choice. More choice equals more competition. The more competition that sellers have for their home, the less that's going to drive that price of the house up over fair market value. And so that competition is such a great thing for you as a buyer, and that you have maybe multiple houses that you might consider making an offer on, or you might have a house that's been on the market for more than 10 days that you can negotiate seller paid closing cost, or you can negotiate the price of the house. That's something that was almost unheard of even just a couple of months ago. And so that is the correction that we are starting to see with the housing market here in the North Metro Atlanta area.
We're just going back to a stabilized, normalized market. And I welcome it.
Warren from who has the new job in Lawrenceville says that his wife is a huge fan of us, and that we may possibly get a new client when we relocate.
We would love to have you.
Yes, we would love to meet your wife and help y'all find a home. Definitely. So thank you for watching, and tell your wife that we said hello. All right. Next question. This is Rohit. Hopefully I said that correctly. He is still going through all of our videos. Can you speak to how the process is expected to change with out-of-state buyers? I'm looking to move in the next 6 to 12 months.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
We don't really see the process changing. We treat everybody the same. We have obviously fine-tuned our process over the last couple of years. If anything, our process is going to get better because we are able to give you more time to think about things. We're able to get out to the homes and show you more potential opportunities compared to just having to whiz through all of them and make a decision by the end of the day because tomorrow it's going to be gone. So like I said, I think if anything, our process will just get better.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a great time or a great thought of having more time to make that decision. And so some of our clients that we've had to help over the past year, they were making a decision on that house via a video or FaceTime tour of that house, and they never had an opportunity to come see it in person during that due diligence period. So in the state of Georgia, you have a time period in the contract called the due diligence period. Typically, that's reserved for things like home inspection and really investigating the house to make sure that this is a purchase that you want to move forward with. And for a lot of our clients, a year and a half, 2 years ago, we were able to use that time period to, let's say, do a video tour of that house that they fell in love with, get it under contract, allow them time to fly into town or drive into town, depending upon where they're coming from during their due diligence time period. And if for whatever reason they hated the house whenever they saw it or they weren't in love with it, we could still terminate the contract during that time period and still get earnest money back and essentially like putting a hold on the house without any risk. And so, what we're excited about and what we're, this will change, and that we're starting to see that we will have more time now for those due diligence time periods to allow more flexibility and a little bit more planning in the process of helping our out of state buyers. Um, I would also add that we're starting to see more home to sell contingencies start to come back into negotiations, which we haven't had any of those. I know, Ashley, you recently had one of those for one of our clients.
We've actually had a couple recently that were accepted. And so, that's, like you said, that's something that we haven't seen, gosh, since COVID started. There's a lot of things that very quickly came back into play. And again, I'm excited to see the stabilized, normalized market, because I know it's going to take a little bit of time for everybody just to wrap their minds around where we are in the market. But it really is a positive, just because, like you said, it's very stressful for a seller when they're trying to buy at the same time to not have that contingency in place, because ultimately if something were to happen, you're now responsible for 2 mortgages, and that's a scary place to be. So getting those contingencies accepted is a big deal, and we've actually had 2 or 3 of them recently.
Yeah, and a really great tool that we have in our tool belt was we have a great product that will make you a cash buyer on a home, and we have kind of like a buy before you sell type program available for you as well, and it can be a fantastic option to leverage for you. So if you are finding yourself in a situation where you do have a house to sell, but you found the perfect house here in Georgia that you want to buy, we definitely have a plan in place that can help you with that, and it is a very, very easy, seamless process for you. And it's definitely something that we talk about with our clients in having those consultations with them to make sure that we're giving you all the tools available to you to make that move as easy as possible for you. We have another question. It says, hey, ladies, Ashley just mentioned refinancing. Is there a certain amount of time you have to wait before you can refinance after purchasing a home?
That's a great question. So usually for this, we'll put you in touch with a lender, because there are certain qualifications, and you have to look at if it makes sense to you in order to bring that rate down. So usually what we're looking at is, what has the rate dropped to? Because to do a refinance, you're going to be putting money down, kind of like doing the closing costs again, and you can roll that into the mortgage, or you can just pay that in cash, which is what most people do. However, it has to make sense that the interest rate has to come down enough for that to, really make sense for you. And some things that we've been seeing right now that people are doing, we've been, keeping in close contact with our lenders. We've seen people say, well, what if I buy down the rate? Because you can actually buy points, right? And so that may buy down your rate a little bit. However, this is where it's really important to talk to a lender up front. People say, well, I'm not looking to buy for, another 6 months. Then that's the perfect time that you should be talking to this lender, because they're able to educate you before you are right in the thick of looking for the house. And then, oh, I found the one. Now I need to talk about financing and I'm stressed because I'm going to lose the perfect house. Go ahead and talk to the lender up front, because with those buy down points, sometimes it's really not worth it, because if you're going to stay in this home for the long haul, maybe it is, but probably not, because you're going to refinance between now and then. And if you're only going to stay here, maybe this is your temporary house, you're moving here from another location and you're going to stay here for a few years and then you're going to sell. The amount that you would have had to pay to buy down that rate, you would not have paid by the time you're moving in 5 years. So it just really helps to talk to the lender and get all of their explanation on things and just run different numbers and see what works best for you.
Yeah, and the really great lenders that we pair you with and that we highly recommend that you talk with, they will do just that for you and give you the advice that they would give their family and friends. And at the end of the day, it's always your decision of what you choose to do. We've also had scenarios where um, having buyers reach out and have those conversations much earlier with a lender than what they think is necessary has saved them a lot of money because they've been able to make little tweaks in their credit of paying off a credit card or something that they needed to do that would make a tiny adjustment in their credit score, but then would open up a much better interest rate. And so having that extra time to explore, making sure that you're fully prepared for that home purchase is always a better thing. All right, our next question here is from Eric. He says, "How is the market in Lake Lanier compared to Lake Oconee?"
That's a great question. It's very, very different. Sarah, you know what? You live on the lake. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so first, Lake Lanier and Lake Oconee are very different in feel and in the area that surrounds it. So we actually just had a client reach out this past weekend, and they sent me a house that was on Lake Oconee, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And I know that we had been looking at Lake Lanier property, and so it's like, okay, let's talk about that. So first, Lake Oconee is it's very big. It's also connected to Lake Sinclair, which is also another lake that a lot of people often think about as well. But it is a Georgia Power lake. And so, what that means for you as a buyer is that technically you do not own the land that is under the house on most of the lots around the lake. You are leasing that lot from Georgia Power. So, that's one difference. Another difference is the area surrounding Lake Oconee. So, you are in middle rural Georgia. There is not a whole lot there. Lake Oconee, the biggest town that's on Lake Oconee is the Milledgeville area, and you have Lake Reynolds Plantation, which is a fantastic golf course community there, and you have the Ritz Carlton, which is on Lake Oconee, Reynolds Plantation area. That area, you're going to have some great conveniences, like really great grocery store, and you're going to have some local restaurants. But when I say some, it's a few, and they do have a movie theater there. But if you're wanting to go to Target or a Starbucks, we always reference those in our videos, you are going to be driving quite a ways to get to a Target. And so that's really the difference in the market there. You are going to have maybe a little bit more house for your money on Lake Oconee, I would say, compared to Lake Lanier. But it's all about that lifestyle of what you're going to have around you in your modern day conveniences of whatever you're used to. And it's really just having that conversation with you to get to know what you are looking for and what you want out of living in that lake home. But that's definitely something to consider. And that's kind of the difference between the prices of the lake is everything that's around it. And Lake Lanier is just an hour north of Atlanta. So you have everything at your fingertips there. And that's going to help drive that price of homes there as well.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
It's funny. I grew up on Lake Lanier, and I know you personally live on Lake Lanier right now. And so that's just kind of what I think of when I think of Georgia lakes. And I was actually in my 20s before I had visited Lake Oconee, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I definitely don't know that I could live there full time. It's great to visit. And maybe when I retire.
Yeah. So what I told the clients, I told them I was like, the Lake Oconee is like the true lake house. Like you're going there for the lake, and that's all you're going there for. We have friends that have a house on Lake Sinclair, and we love going down and visiting them. But if we want to go out to eat or go to a grocery store, you're getting in the car and you're driving a good 30 minutes, going through a lot of like tiny roads and back roads, and if you want something fast food, you have like two options from where they live. So it's definitely rural. All right. Another question that we have from Zell says, from Texas here, husband and I will be coming to visit early next year to check out the area. What part of suburban Georgia has a lot of job opportunities?
Oh man, that's a great one. And I think that's actually what has driven a lot of people here recently. We've had so many companies come here, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. They're building the Kia plant. Then what's the one that they just built up in Gainesville area? Amazon. So we've had so many companies come here. I don't know that there's an area that doesn't have job opportunities here.
Yeah, that's right. So anywhere in the North Metro Atlanta area, you are going to find a large number of opportunities, especially depending upon the area that you're in. Um, Ryan is reminding me here in the comments that you always pick on your husband's fishing skills. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I love fishing Lanier. Ryan, you have a fish in your picture. I need for you to take my husband out and show him what to do. uh, um, we recently bought a new boat that was supposed to help with that fishing, and it had all the gadgets and the sonars, and we still don't catch anything. So
I heard that Tom was talking about selling that boat this weekend.
yeah, he told me, he was like, sell the boat, sell the house. Why are we living on the lake? I can't catch anything. But you'll have to keep this between us. Don't tell him that I'm talking about him on these YouTube videos.
You should
He
get
would
him
be,
some lessons for his birthday.
yeah. The great thing is that he's not on social media or doesn't really do any of this kind of stuff, so he'll never know.
It's all out of love, Tom.
Yeah. Warren says, great info, ladies. For Gwinnett County, what are safe, family friendly areas for a family of 4? We may rent before purchasing. Is it costly to break a lease if we find the perfect home?
That's a great question. So, is it costly to break a lease? Usually, you're putting up first and last month's rent to start with, and then to break the lease, it really depends on how the lease is structured. So, it's definitely very important to read that over very carefully because most leases are going to be written that you're going to lose that last month's rent. And so, if it's your perfect house and you're losing $2,000, it may be absolutely worth it to you. Some cases, we do see leases that are written up where you have to pay out the rest of the lease. So, depending on how long you have left in that lease, that could be pretty substantial. So, really making sure that you look at that lease, read it carefully, and make sure that it's worth it to you. If it's the house of your dreams, would be my first advice. As far as family friendly areas, there's a ton of family friendly areas here. 3 to 4 bedrooms is a typical home that you're going to see here. So I don't think that you would really find an issue. I will say that rentals right now are really hard to come by. And that is more the case of where you have to jump on it. Rentals go quickly and they're looking for at least a year lease most of the time. If you're looking for a short term lease, you're probably going to be looking at an Airbnb situation, which long term, 1 to 4 months, that could get pretty pricey.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, a lot of the conversations that we have with clients that are thinking about renting for that first year is to consider that cost of renting. So that money that you're spending, you're never going to get back. And also, we are still anticipating that home prices are still going to increase over the next year. Who knows what interest rates we're going to do? We don't have a crystal ball on that. And so it's really kind of weighing that pros and cons of are you really unsure of where you want to live? And so sometimes we have people that come with the intention of renting, but then they get here, they drive around and they're like, oh, I love this area. Here's a great house in my price point. I love this neighborhood. Yes, let's do this. And so, sometimes that could change, and yet what's best for you and your family, and what you're going to feel most comfortable doing. And we always encourage you to do that. But that's just definitely something to keep in mind, is that the cost of waiting could be great in some instances. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for all the great comments and information. And of course, if you want any additional information about relocating to the North Metro Atlanta area, this channel is a great resource for you. We have lots of videos and information about moving to Georgia. And of course, if we can help you, please reach out to us. You'll find our contact information below this video. Ashley, I had a lot of fun.
You as well.
All right. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.